Hey, good evening. Hey, I'm going to be doing an extra video regarding the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. I did an expose about the history of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell last week, and I'll link that video in the description below. And what I want to do is get people up to speed about the last 3 days of the trial, between day 6 and to the current day 8. In which I'm going to be using primary source material, showing you videos of the day's news, reading articles from the days all around the world regarding the trial. And none of this information is coming from me. I'm just updating the viewers regarding the trial using primary source data. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it came to my attention through Robbie Martin of Media Roots Radio, in which I have to thank him. There was a Maxwell trial profile on Twitter by the name of Trial Tracker, who had 500,000 followers. And I actually am very careful about the reading material I present to you on video and in the audio, and I'm really meticulous. This is something I'm very anal about. However, with this, I just assumed that this was a legit profile because I saw 500,000 people. And Robbie Martin messaged me on Twitter and said that the profile is quite suspicious because the profile was suspended by Twitter for no reason. And a lot of people were sticking up for it. And I just retweeted saying that, this is how they control the narratives regarding Maxwell trial because of so many high profile names are involved. Well, thankfully, Robbie Martin brought to my attention that this profile was actually not legitimate, and it was actually a Q supporting profile. Now, Q conspiracies are something that I don't adhere to. I don't like fringe conspiracies. They're basically baseless, without merit, without evidence, and I don't like using that. And then I found out also through my own digging earlier this evening that this profile was never at the trial because he was using other people's information, using other people's reporting and claiming it as his own, suggesting that he was at the trial and he's not. So because of that, I ended up blocking any account that is linked to him and any account that is linked to that profile as well. So I'm not going to do it, and I wouldn't recommend you doing it, but I'm not going to tell you not to. But yeah, thank you, Robbie Martin. Okay, on to the trial. So what I'm going to do is open up the video here with playing some news regarding the latest trials, latest events at the trial. So we'll start with day 6, and I will share the screen and share with you the news. Oh, before I do that, I'm sorry. I have to fix the audio. So here we go.
Disturbing revelations in week 1 of the criminal sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, the longtime companion and alleged accomplice of convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. On Friday, defense lawyers grilled Epstein's former house manager about his damning testimony the day prior, when he told jurors that many women visited the home, including some of the underage accusers. He read from an employee manual that instructed, "You see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing." And he said Maxwell told him personally that she was the lady of the house. Prosecutors also brought in a green collapsible massage table that was recovered from Jeffrey Epstein's Palm Beach villa, among other adult items. And joining me now is journalist Vicki Ward. She's the executive producer of Chasing Ghislaine, streaming now on Discovery Plus. Vicki, what do you make of this testimony on the atmosphere at Epstein's home and the manual detailing instructions for staff to remain very discreet about all of this, to maintain extreme discretion? What can you tell us?
Well, so Jim, when Juan Alesi testified about that manual on Thursday, he described it as very degrading. And certainly, it went on for pages and pages and pages, and you could see how visibly affronted he was to have been given a booklet like that. And I think that it's quite possible that the jury found the sort of snobbery that was implicit in it kind of repellent. However, when Juan Alesi was cross-examined by Maxwell's defense team, they really poked holes at his credibility, pointing out that what he had said in court last week under oath about his own history with Jeffrey Epstein, about the fact he said he'd have stolen money from him once, was in fact not true. Under oath, in previous testimony, he had said that he had stolen twice from Jeffrey Epstein. And that, I could see jurors nodding, shaking their heads at this. That seemed to be a successful strategy for the defense to really strike at his credibility.
And this week, we also heard from Epstein's personal pilot. He listed some of the high rollers who flew on Epstein's private jets, including Prince Andrew, former President Clinton, former President Trump, as well as a pair of former senators. These men aren't accused of wrongdoing, at least not in this circumstance. But is this why, according to your reporting, people in high society are bracing for the fallout from this trial?
So I think people are bracing possibly for being named in this trial. We've already heard some names of powerful men that, I certainly didn't know had known Jeffrey Epstein before, Fidel Castro being one. But I think the other point of all of this is, the defense will argue that all these famous people show how Jeffrey Epstein was able to camouflage himself, and I suspect they will argue that in part, Ghislaine Maxwell was compartmentalized from Jeffrey Epstein's life. That's certainly what they said in their opening arguments.
And let's play a clip from your special that gets into the dynamic between Maxwell and Epstein.
Sources who knew them during this time told me that he insisted she lose weight, and that she did. That he could be incredibly abusive to her in public, and she put up with it in silence.
Is Maxwell also a victim of Epstein's abuse and manipulation, do you think? What do you make of that question? And do you expect the defense to play up that angle?
So it's complicated, Jen. We did hear from Juan Alesi under cross-examination by Ghislaine Maxwell's defense lawyer how Jeffrey Epstein would ask the house manager to remove all photographs of Ghislaine Maxwell on weekends or periods of time when he wanted to invite other women to come and stay. And the defense suggested that this was a secret between the house manager and Epstein. So, clearly this was an attempt to show how manipulative Epstein was, and that Maxwell was someone who was a victim, if you want to use that word, of those manipulations. Having said all of that, so far, I don't think you've seen the defense try necessarily to play up the fact that she was manipulated by Jeffrey Epstein. I think what they're trying to do is separate her from Jeffrey Epstein's sort of rather clear criminality.
So, yeah, there you have it, right? So now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading some articles. These are all in chronological order. It's coming out of day 6. And I'm going to read them from all news agencies, foreign and domestic. So it's the next, I'm going to read from the article, The Independent, and it was dated December 6, 2021, regarding day 6 of the trial. One of Ghislaine Maxwell's accusers had described seeing the enjoyment in her face as the 59-year-old British socialite humiliated her alleged victims. as the engineer of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Sarah Ransome, who says she was repeatedly raped by Epstein over a 9-month period, stating in 2006, told CBS News that Miss Maxwell is a very sick woman who visibly took pleasure in humiliating her alleged victims. Ghislaine enjoyed humiliating us, and you could see the enjoyment in her face, she said before she told the jury. Miss Ransome described Miss Maxwell as an aristocratic pimp who orchestrated the abuse carried out by convicted pedophile Epstein. She was the organizer. She was the engineer. She orchestrated everything, she said. Miss Maxwell's high-profile sex trafficking trial is currently underway in New York. The former girlfriend and alleged madam of Epstein is accused of preying on vulnerable young girls and grooming them for the billionaire financier to abuse between 1994 and 2004. Ms. Ransome, who flew into New York City last week for the start of the trial, spoke out ahead of her release of the book Silence No More, Surviving My Journey to Hell and Back. She said she flew to the late pedophile's private Caribbean island, Little St. James, thinking it sounded so amazing, and that she was introduced to Epstein at a nightclub in New York City in 2006 when she was 22. It was here that she said she first met Maxwell, and where she found herself trapped on the island, nicknamed Pedophile Island by Epstein survivors, being raped repeatedly by Epstein. It sounded so amazing, and then, boof, you're on this island, and that's it, lock and key. There is no escape, and there is no one to hear your screams and cries. Ms. Ransome said the alleged abuse continued for 9 months. All the while, she feared her family would be murdered if she revealed what was going on. It was made very clear to me that first trip that if I ever went to the authorities, if I ever told my parents, if I ever told my friends, if I ever left, Jeffrey said to me, I will kill you. I will hunt your mother and father down, and I will kill them. I was frozen. I was petrified. You had no way else to run or escape. Otherwise, you and your entire family will be murdered. Ms. Ransome, now 37, sued Epstein and Miss Maxwell in 2017 and reached a settlement with them, something she said she now regrets because she will never have her day in court. The next article is from the New York Post, dated December 6, 2021, in which I'll read you the quote from it. A former British model took the stand on Monday to detail how she was allegedly lured into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit by Ghislaine Maxwell at the age of 17 and asked to recruit other girls to give him oral sex. The woman, identified only as Kate for privacy reasons, testified that the British socialite introduced her to Epstein at Maxwell's London townhouse in the early 1990s and convinced her to give him a sexual massage soon after. Maxwell even tried to get Kate to recruit others to give the late pedophile oral sex, telling her he liked cute, young, pretty girls like you. She would ask me if I knew anyone to come and give Jeffrey a blowjob because it was a lot of fun for her to do, recalled Kate, who is a former actress. The witness, now 44, said the duo promised to help her building her music career and bragged about the powerful people they knew, including Prince Andrew and Donald Trump. The publishing heiress seemed to know everyone, Kate told the court. She was friends with Prince Andrew, friends with Donald Trump. Sometimes their names would just come up, or she would be talking on the phone about them with me present, the witness said. On one occasion, Kate said she was made to wear a schoolgirl outfit to have sex with Epstein at his Palm Beach, Florida mansion. The testimony came on the same day the jury saw bank statements that showed some $30 million transferred from Epstein's accounts to Maxwell between 1999 and 2007, including about $7 million used to buy a helicopter. Kate, who says she now works with women who suffer from trauma or substance abuse, testified that she only cut off contact with the late sex offender in her early 30s after she became a mother. Before the witness took the stand, Judge Allison Nathan instructed jurors that Kate was not a victim of the crimes charged in the indictment against Maxwell, since she was above the age of consent when she met Maxwell and Epstein. Because of her age, prosecutors were not allowed to question Kate about the details of the sexual conduct between her and the wealthy pedophile. Still, the soft-spoken blonde, who wore her hair pulled back in a bun, described how she was led by Maxwell to give Epstein sexualized massages at the accused madam's London apartment when she was 17. One of the first times Maxwell allegedly told the teen to have a good time after she opened the massage room door to reveal a naked Epstein. When the massage session was over, Maxwell told Kate that she was such a good girl, adding, "So happy you were able to come," the witness testified. "She sounded really pleased," Kate added. The witness said she was introduced to Maxwell in Paris through a friend of hers she dated on and off, and later invited to a posh London home for tea. She seemed very exciting, and she seemed like everything that I wanted to be, Kate said about the older woman. "I thought she was going to be my friend." Maxwell talked up her boyfriend, telling the teen that he would love her and that she was exactly the kind of person he liked to help, Kate recalled. She met Epstein a few weeks later, at which point she massaged his feet and shoulders. And he and Maxwell commented how strong she was, the witness recalled. Maxwell, however, acted as if everything was fun, behaving almost like a schoolgirl, Kate said. Everything seemed to be like a fun, silly joke, she told the jury. Once in Florida in the 1990s, Kate said she arrived to find a pleated skirt, white socks, and shirt laid out on her bed. "I thought it would be fun for you to take Jeffrey his tea in this outfit," she said Maxwell told her when she asked about it. And that was the end of that. And so, here we are. Here we are with day 7 of the trial.
Tonight, disturbing new details in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, now entering its second week. Another alleged victim taking the stand, going by the pseudonym Kate. She spoke about how Maxwell and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein lured her and other young girls into sexual relationships with Epstein. Kate telling the courtroom Maxwell first invited her to her London home for tea, then to give Epstein massages that turned sexual. She added Maxwell thanked Kate, telling her she was such a good girl and so happy you were able to come. Kate testifying Maxwell never participated but set everything up, and adding she was terrified and frozen the first time she saw Epstein naked, with Maxwell standing right next to her.
Kate supports the fact that she's a monster, and that's why she's important. It's showing that Maxwell is intimately involved in getting these sex acts done. And making sure that they happen, and is integral to the entire conspiracy.
Today, the judge instructed the jury that Kate was 17 and over the age of consent when the alleged sexual contact occurred, meaning Maxwell is not charged with any crimes related to what happened. But Maxwell is facing 6 counts of human trafficking related to other victims. Kate also testifying she visited Epstein's Palm Beach mansion, where she said Maxwell gave her a schoolgirl outfit to wear consisting of a short skirt, white socks, and shirt, saying, "I thought it would be fun for you to take Jeffrey's tea in this outfit." Maxwell then handed her a tray, which Kate said she took to Epstein before engaging in sex acts near his pool.
Her entire defense is, oh, no, she's just a bystander. She didn't know anything about it. It's all just a complete misunderstanding. That becomes less and less credible the more people who get on the stand and talk about her intimate involvement in the everyday life.
Kate also telling the courtroom Maxwell was friends with numerous high-profile men, including Prince Andrew and former President Donald Trump, saying sometimes their names would just come up or she would be talking on the phone about them.
The other thing that she corroborates is the level of control that Maxwell had over the household. That's really important. That's part of what has to be proven.
All right, Kathy Park joins us now on set with what was one of the most graphic days in this trial so far. We know that alleged victim, Kate, who's using that alias, the name Kate, was also cross-examined by the defense. What did we learn?
Yeah, so we learned a few more details about her life. She came from a very well-to-do family. She lived comfortably. She was a model. She was featured in a lot of magazines. I think one of the most interesting revelations was the fact that she still stayed in touch with Epstein even after he was convicted in 2008. She admitted to writing emails to him while he was still in jail, even signing off on some of those emails, writing "Love always, Kate."
Okay.
Thanks for watching our YouTube.
That would be that regarding the video. So I'm going to read you some articles as well. This is from CNN, dated just yesterday. So far, 2 women have testified about what they say Maxwell's role was in the sexual abuse by Epstein. 2 more are scheduled to appear in the week. All were minors when the alleged abuse occurred. The Maxwell defense thus far has amounted to memory manipulation and money. As Maxwell's lawyer Bobbi Sternheim put it during her opening statement, in other words, the women testifying can't accurately remember 20-year-old events. They are manipulating the system by only coming forward recently, and they are chasing a payday, not justice. Now, I've studied psychology when I was in college. One thing I could tell you is that sex abuse is something you don't forget, no matter how young you were. Rest of the argument. It's an ugly set of accusations, said Sternheim, made uglier by the fact that Sternheim herself has shamed and blamed the women for their personal struggles and for making the same decisions made by sexual violence survivors the world over, namely to hesitate before coming forward. One of the accusers, Swader's name called Jane, didn't hire a lawyer until charges against Epstein and Maxwell were publicized. Sternheim suggested that was evidence of Jane capitalizing on the circumstances and not of genuine victimization. In reality, it follows the pattern of so many women who came forward on a wave of Me Too accusations. It wasn't until one woman went first and accused a powerful man of wrongdoing that other women who had experienced abuse from the same man felt brave enough to speak out. That's right. That's the end of the article. And so many will continue to speak out. It takes courage to talk about this in front of the world's stage, much less against powerful individuals. Also dated December 7, 2021, a New York Post article talks about Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan lair. Quote, a photo of Epstein kissing the alleged Madam Ghislaine Maxwell was displayed prominently in his Florida mansion, according to a new trove of evidence that also provides an inside look at his creepy Manhattan townhouse. The cache of images released as part of Maxwell's federal sex trafficking trial reveal what FBI agents and the NYPD discovered when they raided the dead pedophile's 7-story Upper East Side home in July of 2019, around the time of his arrest. Special Agent Kelly McGuire testified Monday that her team forced entry into 9 East 71st Street on July 6, 2019, after no one answered the door, and they swept through all 40 rooms where creepy taxidermy animals and a bizarre painting of Bill Clinton in a blue dress were on display. In an office near the front of the 19,000 square foot home, authorities uncovered several plastic bins that contained hard drives already covered in evidence tape, McGuire told the court. Now, also in the article, Assistant U.S. Attorney Allison Moe asked McGuire, as you sit here today, do you have personal knowledge of why there was evidence tapes on those boxes? McGuire replied, no. On the 3rd floor, inside what looked like a dressing room, the agents found a safe stashed inside a closet, which they opened using a saw, McGuire told the jury. The safe contained jewelry, external hard drives, passports, lots of cash, and loose diamonds. There were also binders filled with CDs, but authorities had to get another warrant in order to seize them. When they returned the next day, however, all the items inside the house had disappeared. McGuire said she called Richard Kahn, now the co-executor of Epstein's estate, and one of his sex offender attorneys, Andrew Tomac, and told them she had a warrant for the items. Roughly 30 minutes later, Kahn brought them all back in 2 suitcases, the agent testified. Court papers filed in Epstein's child sex trafficking case said some of the CDs contained child porn with handwritten labels, including the following: young blank, miscellaneous nudes 1, and girl pics nude. Also on the 3rd floor, agents came across a massage room with heavy pink curtains and a massage table covered in a blanket and white sheet. More CDs were found inside a room on the 5th floor in the bottom of a drawer of a dresser. In the same room, agents discovered a cache of labeled black binders filled with pages of thumbnail photographs that corresponded to CDs. FBI analyst Kimberly Metter, who went through all the photos, testified Tuesday that some of the photos were of Epstein and Maxwell together, including one of her in a skimpy top rubbing his feet aboard a plane. One framed photo of the twosome smooching was found by Palm Beach police inside Epstein's sprawling home there during a 2005 raid, according to photos of the operation submitted as evidence. The beachfront lair also included an odd statue on a bookshelf of someone resembling Epstein giving another person a massage. Several women have alleged that Epstein, and at times Maxwell, would sexually abuse them during so-called massage sessions at the horror house. End quote. Now, you can't see the pictures, but I'm going to show you some of those pictures and open them up, and so that you can see them. And, you know, I'll share the screen so you can see it. These are going to be some of the photos that were collected by the government, used in the prosecution or used in the trial of Maxwell. This is from his beach, his Manhattan front, and you can see there's a picture. This is a drawing of Ghislaine Maxwell right here. This is the bathroom. Here's the blow up of the picture. This is a photo of a Maxwell and Ghislaine kissing. And this looks like a 8x10 photo, maybe, with a frame. Here's a tub of CDs collected by the FBI. More CD, and you can see, look at all these CDs. There's a lot. Who knows how many were right here? I don't know how many, but some of these CD holders carry up to anywhere between 50 to 100. Looks about 30 here. Who knows how many here? There's another photo of them together. What the prosecution wants to portray to the jury is that Maxwell wasn't as separate as she claimed to be of Epstein, that they were intimately together and they were inseparable. Now, this is key because the defense is trying to portray Maxwell as separate from Epstein and that she was abused by Epstein. I think this is from also his Manhattan apartment. There's a massage table in the Manhattan apartment that was brought up in the trial by one of his employees. One of them is a green table as well. These are all the binders that were keeping the, I think, CDs. Look at all those binders. Who knows how many compromising CDs he had of these high-profile people, you know, and that's what I believe. Now, this is speculation, so take this with a grain of salt. You know that picture of Bill Clinton in the blue dress and the red pumps that everyone has seen that was in the Florida home? Now, that was a painting of Bill Clinton in women's dress and shoes. Now, this is why I speculate. I think that he caught Bill Clinton having sex with an underage girl, and then he told Clinton, you know, I want to draw a picture of you in women's clothes. And Clinton basically had, you know, he was in no position to say no. And he did. And that's why that drawing exists. That's what I think. Does that make sense to you? Maybe not. Okay, so this is a photograph. Now, these next two photographs I'm going to show you was taken at a home owned by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of Great Britain. Here's Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. This picture, I think, was taken in 1999. There she is, Queen Elizabeth. So that's all the pictures. There's more, but they were of like rooms in the mansion of Florida, New York. So I'm going to read you more articles. December 7th, New York Post. Epstein, file on Epstein hard drive, details relationship with Maxwell. A document found on a hard drive in Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhouse detailed his intimate relationship with alleged Madam Ghislaine Maxwell, including how the two were rarely apart. The fawning file was created on a desktop by someone logging in as the user Gmax on October 14, 2002, and discovered by the feds after they were raided the sex offender's Upper East Side lair in 2019. An FBI digital forensic examiner, Stephen Flatley, testified in Manhattan federal court on Tuesday. Jeffrey and Ghislaine have been together as a couple for the last 11 years, the note started. They are, contrary to what people think, rarely apart. I always see them together. The document went on to describe the British socialite as highly intelligent and great company with a ready smile and an infectious laugh who puts people at ease. That's how she manipulates her young victims. Jeffrey and Ghislaine share many mutual interests, and they have a lot of fun together. It was confirmed. The duo was described as thick as thieves, with the file noting they complement each other really well. On top of being partners, they were also best friends. Other files recovered from the hard drives included a help wanted flyer for masseuses in Palm Beach, Florida, that advertised excellent pay. One missive from May 25th, 2001, complained that Epstein's Palm Beach housekeeper, Juan Alessi, who claimed he cleaned up sex toys from Epstein's massage room, was doing a truly awful job. The message referred to Alessi as John instead of Juan, which he testified last week was the name Maxwell and Epstein used to call him when he worked for the pair from 1991 to 2002. It's unclear who wrote the notes or what purpose they served. They were among the trove of hard drives and other electronic materials recovered from Epstein's multi-million-dollar home around the time of his July 2019 arrest on federal sex trafficking charges. That's the end quote. And so, here we are, December 8th, trial date 8. And here's the news.
Maxwell's siblings have written to the U.S. Attorney General tonight asking for immediate improvements in her treatment during her federal sex trafficking trial. They claim she's been deprived of adequate food during long trial days and has had little time to meet with her attorneys. Our investigative reporter, Terry Parker, is here with a closer look at their claims and the request and new testimony from a second Maxwell accuser. Terry?
Yes, Ghislaine Maxwell's siblings paint a grim picture of the treatment they say she's enduring during this 6-week trial. That the first 12-hour day of trial, officials neglected to give her any food at all. And that's just one of the ways they claim she's being abused. Meantime, a new accuser says Maxwell pushed her into being abused by Jeffrey Epstein, one time dressed up in a schoolgirl outfit. A second accuser takes the stand, saying she was just 17 when Ghislaine Maxwell introduced her to Jeffrey Epstein and pressured her into giving him sexual massages. That witness, using the pseudonym Kate, told jurors Maxwell once laid out a schoolgirl outfit for her at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion, telling her to wear it while serving Epstein tea poolside, which she says led to sex. Afterwards, she says Maxwell asked me if I had fun and said, "You are such a good girl."
Ghislaine is innocent until proven guilty.
Maxwell's brother, Kevin Maxwell, and her other 5 siblings are meanwhile demanding a change in treatment for their sister during the trial.
And we don't want this daily torture to continue. Get rid of the shackles and feed her. She is not being fed. She had a day with no food at all.
The siblings wrote this letter to Attorney General Merrick B. Garland saying Maxwell is being denied food, soap, and the ability to talk to her lawyers outside of court, and is being taken to and from court in shackles around her wrist, waist, and ankles.
They cause pain, they injure her, she's been bruised, she's even bled on occasion. They force her to walk up and down stairs.
The Maxwells say Ghislaine is fed only a boiled egg, some bread, and a banana during her 12-hour days in court, and she cannot effectively help defend herself.
This is unfair, inhumane, and frankly, and I'm saying this as a visitor and a guest in your country, it's a disgrace for the United States of America to treat people this way.
The witness, Kate, comes from outside the U.S. where the age of consent is 17, so she's not allowed to describe the alleged sex with Epstein, but is being used to give further evidence of Maxwell's alleged recruiting and grooming of teen girls for Epstein's pleasure. We've also reached out to the Attorney General and are waiting for a reply.
Yeah, and look, they're just trying to show a pattern, right, of his abuse and his manipulation through Maxwell. And I mean, you know, yeah, innocent until proven guilty, but my God, I mean, this is not like new, like these charges were just brought up against her. This is going back decades, right? So I'll read you an article that was dated today from CNN. Quote, Caroline said she was just 14 years old when she began to go to Jeffrey Epstein's home in Palm Beach, Florida, 2 or 3 times per week in the early 2000s. One such visit, Caroline was setting up a massage room for Epstein when his longtime companion, Ghislaine Maxwell, came into the room. Maxwell touched Caroline's breasts, hips, and butt, and commented that she had a great body for Epstein and his friends, according to Caroline. Each time she visited, $300 in cash was left for her on the bathroom sink, she said, but it was not without a cost. Something sexual happened every single time, Caroline said. Now in her 30s, Caroline described her teenage experiences with Epstein on Tuesday in Maxwell's federal trial on charges, sex trafficking in minors, and also on Thursday. At one point in the stand, Caroline sobbed when prosecutor Maureen Comey asked if she was trying to get money for her testimony. No money will not ever fix what that woman has done to me, Caroline said, sobbing, because what she did was wrong. And she takes vulnerable young girls and traffics them, and I'm so petrified that my daughters are going to be trafficked. Caroline is the 3rd woman to testify that she was sexually abused by Epstein and that Maxwell was involved. A woman identified as Kate testified Monday that Maxwell set up those sexual meetings, and a woman identified as Jane said last week that Maxwell sometimes joined in on the sexualized massages. End quote. Now, this is from the Daily Mail, dated December 8, 2021. Quote, Jeffrey Epstein was once in a relationship with a blonde Norwegian heiress who also dated Donald Trump. The Ghislaine Maxwell trial heard on Wednesday. The pedophile also seeing Selena Middlehart in the mid-1990s, around the same time he was dating other women. It was claimed. Middlefart? Wow, what a name, huh? Oof. Is the heir to her family's cosmetics fortunes, and flight logs showed she took at least 13 trips on Epstein's private jet. The claim was made by one of Maxwell's lawyers during cross-examination of Epstein's former pilot on day 8 of the trial of Maxwell, who denies recruiting and trafficking in underage girls for Epstein. Pilot Dave Rogers testified that Maxwell and Epstein were initially dating, but later broke up. Rogers took the jury to flight logs of Epstein's private plane, infamously known as the Lolita Express. Maxwell was on many of those flights, sometimes with Virginia Roberts, who has pursued criminal and civil actions against both Epstein and Maxwell. He said he flew Roberts a total of 32 times in the early 2000s. He also claimed he also flew 4 flights with Maxwell's accuser, Jane, on board. Now, that's big. Prosecutors read off flights from the logbook that included trips to Spain and Morocco in 2001, where Roberts was on board. The girlfriends included Shelley Lewis, a British woman who dated Epstein between 1999 and 2002. Rogers confirmed he thought they had been a couple. Everdell asked if Rogers was aware Epstein was in a romantic relationship with Manafort around 1996, and he said yes. Manafort is said to have been the woman that Donald Trump dumped to date Melania Trump, his third wife. The former president supposedly ditched her in 1998 after she had been dating Epstein. Trump and Manafort were supposedly on a night out at the Kit Kat Club in New York when he saw Melania and asked her for her number. The former first lady refused, but Trump persisted, and she eventually agreed. Now married with one child, she grew up in Oslo, studied at the London School of Economics and NYU. Day 8 of the trial began Wednesday morning when the boyfriend of alleged victim Caroline, who testified that she began going to Epstein's house to give him massages when she was 14 years old. Nicole Hess, who was the Palm Beach maintenance manager from 2003 to 2004, took the stand and said she took 3 messages during that time from a woman named Caroline. She said Maxwell instructed her where to leave messages when she wasn't home. Outside the courtroom, former model Lisa Phillips was seen arriving. She previously claimed a friend of hers slept with Prince Andrew on the orders of Epstein. Another alleged victim who claims Maxwell groomed her is expected to testify before the government rests its case this week. And there was a number of names being named, including Prince Andrew, who was seen on the planes by the pilots. Now, let me be quite clear. The people named, right, weren't seen having sex with underage girls, but they were seen on the planes. And on Tuesday, Jeffrey Epstein's former pilot, Lawrence Paul Visosky Jr., who worked under Epstein between 1991 and 2018, when he was questioned by Maxwell's defense attorney, and he revealed a laundry list of celebrities who were guests on Epstein's private plane. And he named the names, the following: Kevin Spacey, Visosky said that Spacey was a passenger on Epstein's plane multiple times. Chris Tucker was once aboard Epstein's plane, according to Visosky's testimony. In 2005, Tucker also testified in Michael Jackson's child molestation trial and called the accusers cunning. Prince Andrew, according to Visosky, he was a multiple visitor on the plane. And Virginia Guffrey, who says she was flown around on Epstein's plane with Maxwell when she was a teenager, claims that she was sexually assaulted by Andrew twice. Bill Clinton, according to Visosky, also was on this plane. Now, okay. That's up to the latest dates, latest results. Now, who knows what they're going to present tomorrow and Friday? I don't know. Now, there have been criticisms about how the prosecution is handling the trial. Now, what I'm going to share with you is what I believe might be the case is we're going to have slowly but surely detractors. Now, we've been seeing this with fake Twitter accounts promoting these conspiracies, these fringe conspiracies about the prosecution, but also there have been independent writers who have been criticizing how the prosecution's handling the case. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, you know, this is because they're protecting Maxwell and Epstein, maybe because they're victims of blackmail or not. No, I'm not going to say that. I just think that, there are going to be people who are going to criticize how the case is being handled, that there should be more evidence involved. Well, look, they're only going by the evidence provided by former employers of Maxwell and Epstein and also the victims. And we all know how women victims are treated when it comes to sex abuse cases. It's the reason why women don't come out. And especially a polarizing case like this, the biggest sex case in history, probably. And these poor women, like Sarah Ransome, Virginia Guffrey, and including one, I will be remiss if I don't mention her name because she actually now follows me on Twitter, and I just got to know her, Maria Farmer, who's suffering from cancer as well. She was one of the very first victims to be abused by Epstein, and the courage to come out initially must have been, just enormous. This is before the Epstein case was even big. I'm hoping I'm doing justice by her regarding trying to give you the best information available, primary source information. I'm not, giving you any false information, and trying to educate the public about this very important case. And it is important because look at how many people could be involved. Former world leaders, and we may have even a bigger conspiracy involving foreign intelligence involved. This is blackmail, sexual blackmail. Why do you think these houses were filled with cameras and listening devices? To put these people in a compromising position. And they're not victims. Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey and whoever is going to be named as victims, Prince Andrew, right? If we're to believe the victims. They're not victims, they're predators. And they're being blackmailed by a very powerful individual with powerful connections. And there's a ladder to this hierarchy. And it doesn't stop with Maxwell, with Jeffrey Epstein. And, a good buddy of mine now, proud to say, Reed Coverdale of the Naturalist Capitalist podcast is going to be interviewing Maria Farmer. And that's going to be a whopper, so to speak. So let's talk about the connection between Maxwell and Epstein. And when did it start? In the first video that I made about a week prior, I talked about the expose, the background of Epstein, not so much Maxwell. I did a little bit about Maxwell, but not too much. And I'll just give you general details. Maxwell, and I'm going to be reading from news articles and files and websites, a multitude of different things. So I'm just going to try and put it into a chronological order where it's makes sense to you. So none of this is from my own expertise on Maxwell, because I'm trying to give you primary source material to use, just so in case that, in the future, we'll have these detractors that say, people who are informing about this trial, they're going to say, well, don't listen to these people. They're just speaking out their own opinions. This is the reason why I'm sharing documents and files with you, news articles, and so forth, the best I can, anyway. Maxwell was born in 1961 in France, and she's actually the 9th and youngest child of her mother, Elizabeth, and her father, Robert Maxwell, who's a Czechoslovakian-born media proprietor from a Jewish family. And there's a lot of mystery about Maxwell, Robert Maxwell. And so I'll give you a little bit about Ghislaine, and I'm going to talk about Robert Maxwell, because I think this is even bigger. like I said about there's a hierarchy involved. But Maxwell was a prominent member of the London scene during the 1980s, and she actually was one of the primary founders of the original Kit Kat Club. And the Kit Kat Club was an early English club, but then it got reformed and has a lot of history. And she was involved with the Kit Kat Club. She also worked at the European, which is a publication her father had started. The European was it's actually billed as the very first national paper for Europe. That goes back to, it was first published in 1990, I think. And according to Tom Bauer of the Sunday Times, in 1986, Robert Maxwell invited her to the christening in her honor of the new yacht that he bought, which is called the Lady Ghislaine, at a shipyard in the Netherlands. Now, this is going to be important because this is where the conspiracy begins, right? About Maxwell and Lady Ghislaine both. So throughout the 80s, Robert Maxwell spent a large amount of time aboard this yacht, which was equipped. It was a huge yacht. Google Lady Ghislaine yacht. It was a tremendous boat. Just, oh my God. It was equipped with like a jacuzzi, a sauna, a gym, a disco. And that the boat itself was tailor-made for her, just for her. The Sunday Times that I talked about reported that Maxwell flew to New York on November 5th, 1990 to deliver an envelope on her father's behalf that, unknown to her, was part of a plot inherited by her father to steal $200 million from the shareholders of the Berlitz Corporation, which is a Japanese-owned language training company based in Princeton, New Jersey. And then in the following year, Robert Maxwell bought the New York Daily News, and he sent Ghislaine to New York City to act as his emissary. And on November 5th, 1991, Robert Maxwell's body was found floating in the sea near the Canary Islands, which was, he was on board the Lady Ghislaine. So there was a lot of conspiracy about how he was killed. Now, according to Israeli intelligence, by the way, at Robert Maxwell's funeral, it was a high-profile funeral, and Israeli President Chaim Herzog and Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir gave his eulogy and attended the funeral. And according to Israeli courts, the verdict of death was accidental drowning, but Ghislaine said he was murdered. But it was later reported that Robert Maxwell was found to have fraudulently appropriated the pensions assets of the Mirror Group newspapers, which is a British tabloid magazine and digital publisher, a company that he ran and that he held a large share of ownership that goes back, I don't know how many years, and that they were reportedly over 440 million pounds, right, in pension funds missing, which left the surviving Maxwell family members and the British government to repay the 32,000 people affected bond regarding Robert Maxwell's fraudulent proclivities. And two of Ghislaine Maxwell's brothers, Ian and Kevin, were the most involved with their fathers in the daily business dealings, and they were arrested and charged with fraud, but they were acquitted of the charges later on. And following this, Ghislaine moved to the United States in 1991 following her father's death. Now, this is where she began her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there's a number of differing accounts about the exact date of when she first met Jeffrey Epstein. Although some say in the late 1980s, some say, like the New York Times, for example, reported that Maxwell met Epstein in the early 1990s at a party that involved with Maxwell's breakup with Count Gianfranco Sigona Mozzocchi, which, by the way, that relationship was rather, and it, by the way, he's an Italian parliament member. A lot of murky details about that. And that Maxwell began a relationship with Epstein here, a romantic relationship. And that transcended throughout the 1990s and remained closely associated with him all the way until his death in 2019. In a deposition in 2009, several of Epstein's former associates and employers, household employees, they testified that Epstein referred to her as the main girlfriend, because he had multiple, who was in charge of hiring and firing the staff at Epstein's mansions and his businesses, starting at around 1992. Now, I don't know how Maxwell's lawyers are going to say that she was quite distant from him, because this is overwhelming evidence that they were not. They were closely, and that's going to, I think, if there's going to be anything that's going to be doing them besides the victims' testimonies, is the evidence coming from the employees and the documents seized, showing that their relationship was not only a business relationship, but it was an intimate relationship that goes back to the early 90s. And that she was always referred to as the lady of the house, and that Epstein demanded his employees label Maxwell as the lady of the house. And that throughout the years, Epstein's staff remarked that she was very aggressive, very demanding. And there were articles written throughout the late 1990s, early 2000s, in which one article written by Politico, which is a journalist-based company out of Virginia, reported that Maxwell and Epstein had friendships that started in the early 1990s with many prominent people. Prince Andrew of York, Harvard law professor and chair Alan Dershowitz, Bill Clinton, former US president, Donald Trump, New York City business mogul and former president, and other like actresses and actresses. There's so many to name. It's reported that Jay-Z is actually friends with Epstein. But Maxwell is actually, Ghislaine Maxwell is quite well known with her friendships with Prince Andrew. And remember, I showed you those photos taken in 1999 at Queen Elizabeth's home, this parlor that was taken in 1999. And that, Maxwell used to give Prince Andrew, hookers and all these girls at social functions, not just in Great Britain, but here in New York City too. And it was through Maxwell's link with Epstein, with Prince Andrew, that she introduced him to Epstein. So, and in the year 2000, Maxwell and Epstein attended a party that was thrown by Prince Andrew at the Queen's Sandringham House in Norfolk, England. And it was The party wasn't for him. It was for Ghislaine Maxwell's 39th birthday. Now, Prince Andrew is trying to do damage control, and in 2019, after Epstein was killed, he was killed. Well, I'm not going to say suicide because that's the term that they want you to do. He was murdered. Prince Andrew confirmed with a BBC interview that Maxwell and Epstein did attend the event at his invitation, but he denied that it was anything more than a straightforward shooting weekend. Of course not. He's not going to come right out and say, yeah, I was banging hookers behind my wife's back. In 1995, Epstein renamed one of his companies the Ghislaine Corporation, based out of Palm Beach, Florida. Does that sound like a distant relationship to you? But the company dissolved in 1998. So there. And over the years, and we're seeing in the trial about the evidence that Maxwell and Epstein had outfitted all the homes with cameras and listening devices and started bringing in all these high-profile names from Hollywood, from politics, foreign and domestic, world leaders, athletes, started going to these homes, mansions to engage in sex. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know for sure that they had sex with underage girls. I don't know that they knew they were. I'm going to say probably most of them didn't. But he had them on camera, and he used that to blackmail them. Now, the argument could be made that they knew exactly that they were underage because they could look at it. I mean, according to one victim, she was freaking 14. Can 14-year-olds be made to look 18? Sure. But, however, I mean, it's a stretch, right? So, when you have these high-profile names engaging in sex with these girls that are young, he's blackmailing these people. And for what other purposes? To get information, to get stature in Hollywood or in politics? I believe that was the case. That's why it led me to my speculation about Bill Clinton in the painting. That he probably had Bill Clinton, laying on the couch in women's clothing. And Maxwell painting him because he's an artist. She's actually writing, she's actually drawing pictures for the press artists at the trial. That's what I heard anyway. And so all these affidavits came out. I mean, Virginia Guthrie and Maxwell in 2015, in which the details of a civil lawsuit made public contained a deposition from Jane Doe number 3 that accused Maxwell of recruiting her in 1999 when she was a minor and grooming her to provide sexual services for Epstein. Sarah Ransome versus Epstein in Maxwell in 2017. Ransome filed a suit with the Southern District of New York against Epstein and Maxwell, alleging that Maxwell hired her to give massages to Epstein and later threatened to physically harm her and her family. An affidavit filed by Maria Farmer in 2019. On April 16th, Maria Farmer went public and filed a sworn affidavit in federal court alleging that she and her 15-year-old sister, Annie, had been sexually assaulted by Epstein and Maxwell on separate locations in 1996. And a number of different affidavits began filing up, and then Maxwell, of course, is arrested. So now I'm going to read you the profile of her father, Robert Maxwell. This is important. Maxwell was born in a poor house in a small town in Slatsky in Czechoslovakia in 1923, in which most of Maxwell's family were murdered in Auschwitz. and after Hungary was occupied by Nazi Germany in 1944. But Maxwell had escaped to France in early 1940. And in May of 1940, he joined the Czechoslovakian army in exile in Marseille, France. But after the fall of France and the British retreat to Britain, Maxwell, using a surname, took part in a protest against the leadership of the Czechoslovakian army with about 500 other soldiers. And then he was involved in action throughout Europe, from the Normandy beaches to Berlin, where he achieved the rank of sergeant and gained a commission in 1945 to the rank of captain. After the war, he began working with a number of different people. In the beginning of 1964, he began representing the Labour Party, and he was elected as a member of Parliament for Buckingham and re-elected in 1966, in which he gave an interview to the Times in 1968, in which he said that the House of Commons provided him with a problem. "I can't get on with men," he said. "I tried having male assistants at first, but it didn't work. They tend to be too independent. Men like to have individuality. Women can become an extension of the boss." Now that's important, because you could see that genetic link regarding women of Ghislaine. But in 1970, Robert Maxwell lost his seat to another conservative challenger. At the beginning of 1969, it was emerged that Robert Maxwell attempted to buy the tabloid News of the World, but it failed. And the owners of that tabloid, I can't remember the family name, but they were incensed at the thought of a Czechoslovakian immigrant with socialist politics gaining ownership, since it was a conservative tabloid. The paper, by the way, was later purchased by Australian tycoon Robert Murdoch, who later that year acquired The Sun, which also was previously interested by Maxwell to be purchased. In 1969, Maxwell falsely stated that a subsidiary responsible for publishing encyclopedias was extremely profitable. At around the same time, Pergamon, which is a Pergamon Press, which is basically a Orthodox-based publishing house based in Oxford, United Kingdom, had been forced to reduce its profits during a period of negotiations, and dealing in Pergamon shares was suspended on the London stock markets. Now, Steinberg claimed that during the negotiations, Robert Maxwell falsely stated that a subsidiary responsible for publishing those encyclopedias, like I mentioned before, was responsible for this. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but evidently Maxwell lost control of Pergamon and was expelled from the board, along with 3 other directors. Due to fraudulent activity. Now, this is going to be like the theme of Robert Maxwell's life. I mean, fraud, plus his business activities, which had nefarious origins, just all surrounded this guy. A very peculiar background. And by July of 1984, Maxwell acquired Mirror Group Newspapers, which is the publisher of 6 British newspapers, including the Daily Mirror. And then the following year, Maxwell announced a takeover of Sinclair Research, which is a British consumer electronics company founded by Clive Sinclair through a Pergamon subsidiary. The deal was aborted in August of 1985, but later on, Maxwell purchased part of IPC Media to create Fleetway Publications, which was a magazine publishing company based in London. So Maxwell had a lot of interests in publications, media publications, focusing on his socialist background. There was a lot of pushback by the conservatives in Britain regarding Maxwell and his family wanting to spread propaganda, maybe in these outlets, who knows? But there was a lot of fraud regarding Maxwell and any business he dealt with, just about. But Maxwell had ties with Eastern European totalitarian regimes. In several biographies regarding these leaders of several European countries, with interviews conducted by Maxwell himself, to which he received much derision and criticized heavily. But Maxwell also became the chairman of Oxford United, which was a professional football club, and he saved them from bankruptcy. And he attempted to merge them with Reading, another club. Something very interesting also came up in the mid-1980s. A bugged version of the intelligence spy software Promise, which was a case management software developed by Inslaw, a nonprofit organization established in 1973, in which the software program was developed with aid from the Law Enforcement Assistant Administration to aid prosecutors' offices in trafficking in 1982, drug trafficking. And it was sold in the mid-1980s for Soviet government use, with Robert Maxwell acting as the conduit. And it was related in a French bestseller book. But Maxwell was known to be litigious against those who would speak or write against him. He was very aggressive. He would spend an enormous amount of money to blackmail or dig up dirt on anyone, including media, about anyone trying to dig into his background. And his background was met with some nefarious history. Now, there is some concern about his background. There's a controversy, too, regarding Israeli intelligence. Remember I mentioned that he was in the Czechoslovakian army, the communist leaders of Czechoslovakia. And why did I mention it? Because according to reports, a hint of Maxwell's service to Israel was provided by John Loftus, who is if you don't know him, he's a U.S. government prosecutor and former Army intelligence officer, and Mark Aarons, who's a Australian journalist and a political advisor to New South Wales Premier Bob Carr, that they described Maxwell's contacts with Czechoslovakian communist leaders as crucial to the Czechoslovakian decision to arm Israel in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. That's huge. Czechoslovakian military assistance was both unique and crucial, according to the report, for the fledgling state as it battled for its existence. According to Loftus and Aarons, It was Maxwell's covert help in smuggling aircraft parts into Israel that led the country having air superiority during the 1948 War of Independence. And that comes from a report written by Loftus and Aarons called The Secret War. And they wrote a book called The Secret War Against the Jews, how Western espionage betrayed the Jewish people. I'm going to link that book into the description. According to Gordon Thomas in 1999, in an article in St. Martin's Press entitled Gideon Spies, The Secret History of the Mossad. I'm sorry, this comes from the book, Gideon Spies. The Foreign Office suspected that Maxwell was a secret agent of a foreign government, possibly a double agent or a triple agent, and a thoroughly bad character, and almost certainly financed by Russia. He had known links to the British Secret Service, MI6, to the Soviet KGB, and the Israeli Mossad. 6 serving and former heads of Israeli intelligence services attended Maxwell's funeral in Israel. Remember I mentioned that before? In that Yitzhak Shamir eulogized, quote, he has done more for Israel than today be told, end quote. Shortly before Maxwell's death, a former employee of Israel's military intelligence directorate, Ari Ben-Menash, approached a number of news organizations in Britain and the United States with the allegation that Maxwell and the Daily Mirror's foreign editor, Nicholas Davies, were both longtime agents for Mossad. Remember how I outlined Maxwell's interests in purchasing a number of tabloid magazines? Ben-Menash also claimed that in 1986, Maxwell informed the Israeli embassy in London that Mordecai Vanunu, a famous whistleblower, one of the best whistleblowers in history, revealed information about Israel's nuclear capability to the Sunday Times and then to the Daily Mirror. Vanunu was subsequently kidnapped by Mossad and smuggled to Israel, convicted of treason, and imprisoned for 18 years. Ben-Menash's story was ignored at first, but eventually journalist Seymour Hersh, a legend, of The New Yorker, repeated some of the allegations during a press conference in London held to publicize the Samson option, Hersh's book about Israel's nuclear weapons. On October 21st, 1991, Labor MP George Galloway, and Conservative MP Rupert Allison agreed to raise the issue in the House of Commons under parliamentary privilege protection, which in turn allowed British newspapers to report events without fear of libel suits. Maxwell called the claims ludicrous and a total invention and sacked Davies. A year later, in Galloway's libel settlement against Mirror Group newspapers, Galloway's counsel announced that the MP accepted that the group staff had not been involved in Vanunu's abduction. Galloway referred to Robert Maxwell as one of the worst criminals of the century. After Maxwell's death, which triggered instability in the publishing empire, with banks calling in the massive loans given to Maxwell. Despite the sons' efforts, Kevin and Ian, all of Maxwell's companies collapsed. And Maxwell, in this final act of his criminal nature, had used hundreds of millions of pounds from his company's pension funds to shore up the shares of the Mirror Group to save the company from bankruptcy. Remember I mentioned that before about his interest in Mirror Group? He took all the pensions from all of the employees and he didn't give a damn. All these employees were without their pensions for years. But eventually, the pension funds were replenished with money from the investment banks that were giving out the loans, like Goldman Sachs and Shearson Lehman, and as well as the British government after a court order. But now, don't take it to full that everybody was paid back. The replenishment was limited, and it was supported by a surplus in the printer's fund. So in total, like the pensioners received maybe less than half of what was owed to them. And Maxwell Companies filed for bankruptcy in 1992, shortly after his death. In total debt, 400 million pounds. Even though he was one of the richest people in the world, according to Maxwell's widow, Elizabeth, when she would publish a memoir called A Mind of My Own, My Life with Robert Maxwell. And when he was once ranked one of the richest people in the world. Which makes you wonder that even though the companies defaulted on their loans, even though they declared bankruptcy, where did all this money go? Offshore bank accounts? Private business owners or business financiers, associates, Ghislaine in offshore bank accounts? Maybe that's why she hooked up with Epstein, because he had shady dealings too that I mentioned in my first video. I couldn't tell you for sure because that's not definitively known, but it does make sense, and it's not too out of the realms or too fringe to speculate. Who knows? What we do know for a fact is that we are now heading into the final stages of the trial. And that whether or not Ghislaine will be found guilty, one thing is for certain, that there are much more powerful people at stake here who have a lot to lose. And if Ghislaine Maxwell has to fall on the sword, the question now becomes, do they trust her to stay silent? Or does she receive the Jeffrey Epstein treatment? Does the FBI, who have the CDs, are they videos of his mansions in St. James, in Florida, in New York? Are they videos of high-profile celebrities and world leaders having sex with underage girls? Are there photographs of them in these compromising positions? Will the FBI release that to the prosecution? We'll never know. Maybe we won't. Maybe we will. But there's more questions than answers, and I don't got all the answers. And I don't ever presume I do. But all I can give to you, the viewer, is the primary source data without any prejudicial slant behind it. And we need more reputable people, more so than me. I'm not reputable. I'm a nobody. I'm just a regular guy trying to give you the news without a slant. And there's other people out there. You know, I got to meet Reed Coverdale, Robbie Martin. You know, Ryan Dawson's been covering the Epstein trial. And there's another person who I'm following now, who has been doing remarkable coverage, and he's there at the trial. One Addy Ads, I'm going to link his page at the description. He should be followed by everybody. He's right there outside the courtroom in New York City. So he's doing a great job. So yeah, these are the guys to follow. These are guys to follow regarding Maxwell coverage, as well as Maria Farmer, who was a victim of Epstein and his sadistic proclivities. And so I'll end the video there. And if there's more updates on the trial, I will do another video, and see you next time.